Hello, we are just getting started here. Hi, Megan. Lowell here. Thanks for joining.
Of course.
Maybe we'll just wait a couple more minutes or 5 minutes or so before I really get into it. It didn't look too promising in terms of the number of people. So, oh, good. Here comes another person. Welcome. We'll wait just a couple more minutes before we get started. Just as a quick introduction, I'm at Arkansas Tech University and I am the music multimedia librarian. The music part sort of has dropped off until recently when a new faculty member joined, and I can actually do more traditional music librarianship with this person, which is a lot of fun. But I've been waiting for an organization like ACTAL to appear for the way that my career, my job is really evolving at our library. And I think that's the story for so many of us who are involved with ACTAL and at the conference, which I'm planning to go to next week. Greatly looking forward to that. So if any of you want to do any introductions, we're so small, I think we won't waste any time, but that's totally optional.
I can just say I'm Megan Oliver, the head of digital projects at University Missouri Kansas City. I've been here a year, so I have to just keep remembering the name. But yeah, I was excited to see this and to hear from you. So that's me.
Great, thank you.
I might be the other participant. I'm Jess Barth. I'm the Emerging Multimedia Technologies Librarian at the University of Delaware, and kind of just signed up for everything and anything. So I'm just curious to see what you have to talk to us about.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's I watched the presentation recently where the person introduced the idea as a big concept presentation. So that's what I'm presenting here, is a big concept or blue sky presentation. And so some people may not see it immediately applicable to their work, but I think it's quite relevant for how we can explain to some of our colleagues what we're trying to do with emerging technologies, multimodal scholarship, and how that directly addresses all kinds of concerns about the state of academia and where people of all types are headed in terms of the evolution of their consciousness. I know that sounds way out there, but we have a special role, I believe, in doing this at our colleges and universities. So, well, without any further ado, I will just go ahead and start. Let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see here. Excellent. So then I will do that one right there. Oh, and then share sound, right? Okay. And then go ahead and share that. Fantastic. Okay, so good old PowerPoint. Let me get to the beginning here. All right, and then let me I'm on a new laptop here, F5. Okay, so before I begin, a short introduction. The intent of these virtual sessions today is to foster discussion more than to watch or listen to presentations given by an individual. And I realize that, so I admit that my presentation here is sort of lecture heavy, but I certainly plan to follow this format of having discussion. And so I will present 3 separate sections, each of which will have time for discussion. And if we don't even get to the 3rd section or whatever, that's fine. I don't want to have like a strict control over the way things evolve. I'm willing to let go of control in that sense. But the first section will be where I offer a definition and read aloud some passages from a scholarly publication on oculocentrism, so we get an idea of what we're talking about, because it's a term that's not all that well known. I will then play a video that readily demonstrates this topic. Like I said, readily illustrates this topic. Secondly, I will review the library literature on oculocentrism as it pertains to academic libraries. It's super simple. There's pretty much one thing. Okay, and then thirdly, I want to discuss how digital media production spaces are inherently multimodal, multisensorial spaces, and therefore what I consider to be DEI, and now I include the letter A for accessibility spaces. It is my observation that media production spaces in libraries, that is to say the people, the technologies, the performative activities, and its products should be considered central to the multimodal movement in academia, as well as in addressing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility concerns. So with that, let's just begin. So oculocentrism definition, this is a ready definition. It's hard to find some dictionaries that have it. The lexicographers simply, they probably haven't gotten around to accepting it as a term. The spell checker consistently wants to hyphenate it. But a perceptual and epistemological bias ranking vision over other senses. Oh, here comes a person. Hey, welcome. Oh, they're connecting to the audio. I just want to say welcome. Welcome. We are just getting started. Thanks. And I would say it's more than just Western cultures. If you study anthropology, of which I did on my undergraduate level, and then the anthropology of music at the doctoral level, it's rather pervasive. And then not only that, but due to the hegemony of, you could broadly term Western, especially American cultural, economic, political, military hegemony, so much of these concepts are now, global and pervasive with this whole movement called modernity. But so we say that seeing is believing, see for yourself, and I'll believe it when I see it with my own eyes. We see eye to eye. We imagine situations in the mind's eye, see what I mean. Now, one particular article by an academic in Ireland, Doncha Kavanagh, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, eloquently summarizes the complex issues involved. And so I'll be reading this at length, but you'll find it really interesting because I think it does a lot. It's dense, a little bit complex, but worth looking over and worth looking at the article. So to begin, to quote, "What is interesting for our purposes is that many of the Enlightenment's central precepts, such as objectivism, reflection, critical rationality, and subjectivism, are fundamentally based on the primacy accorded to the visual. In particular, the dominant ocular-centric paradigm promulgated during the Enlightenment worked to elevate static being over dynamic becoming and fixed essences over ephemeral appearances. This ontological consequence is because sight is essentially the sense of simultaneity, of seeing a wide field at one moment, while hearing significantly more temporal, because it operates through intertwining past, present, and future into a meaningful whole. And sight, unlike hearing, leaves the visible undiminished by its action, creating a unique sense of otherness. Moreover, the phenomenon of distancing, this is really critical, which is the most basic function of sight, helps create the belief that objects are distant from and neutrally apprehended by sovereign subjects, which in turn provides the basis for the subject-object dualism that is so typical of Greek and Western metaphysics. Okay, the dominance of visual metaphors continues to this day in contemporary academic discourse. So insight, illumination, speculate, inspect, focus, reflect, points of view, synopsis, evidence. The spectatorial nature of modern epistemology is also evident when we consider that the word theory has the same root as the Greek word theater, theoria, meaning to look at attentively or to behold. So there's a lot of concepts there, and I'll have this PowerPoint available so you can dig into the original article, and I have a ton of links here in this PowerPoint, but it's been addressed to some extent in popular culture. I mean, just a few things. This blindness is a apocalypse of the world going blind pretty much in our time period, okay? Stars a bunch of top, famous Hollywood actors. This one I find really interesting, and this is, if you can tolerate some of the violence, Jason Momoa, of course, but several other, one of my favorite actors, I forget her name, but this final season is this year, and it's a post-apocalyptic world where the world went blind. And the theory is that due to sight, we had an incredible manipulation over the environment and over nature that led to our downfall. And so at that, they've been blind for several generations. And then finally, some children are born sighted, and this creates a great concern. But it's like the idea of what's more powerful, human evolution, the opposable thumb or our sight. There's all kinds of other ideas that come from this, but so those are two interesting popular culture references to oculocentrism. Now I want to show this one here. What's really significant about Prince EA, and I'm going to refer to him that way because that's his main title or chosen name. But he's a poet, rapper, motivational speaker, a philanthropist. He's a content creator, YouTuber with 6 million subscribers. He graduated magna cum laude from University of Missouri, St. Louis, and a BA in anthropology, okay? And anyone who really studies anthropology gets a really interesting view on how especially race is constructed, the racialization of others, but just culture in general, and the relativism in many respects of how like masculinities or femininities are constructed and so forth. He also, on his own, has studied a lot of Eastern philosophy, which is monist, not dualist. And so I think that ties into the idea of oculocentrism, enhancing a type of dualism and otherization, alterity discourse, where you have an other and a self, okay, on the collective level and on the individual level. And so I am not black, you are not white is his own personal realizations that he believes in our connectedness as opposed to just focusing on our separateness. And that's found in all these Eastern philosophical treatises like the Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching, Yoga Sutras, and so forth. So I do want to show this one here. Let me just see if I can find it. Oh, hold on one second. Oh, Zoom is getting in the way here. 1 second. And no, hold on. I'm so sorry. Let me just close some of these windows. Ah, here we go.
I am not black. I mean, that's what the world calls me, but it's not me. I didn't come out of my mother's womb saying, "Hey everybody, I'm black." No, I was taught to be black. And you were taught to call me that, along with whatever you call yourself. It's just a label. See, from birth, the world force feeds us these labels. And eventually we all swallow them. We digest and accept the labels, never ever doubting them. But there's one problem. Labels are not you and labels are not me. Labels are just labels. But who we truly are is not skin deep. See, when I drive my car, no one would ever confuse the car for me. Well, when I drive my body, why do you confuse me for my body? It's my body. Get it? Not me. Let me break it down. See, our bodies are just cars that we operate and drive around. The dealership we call society decided to label mine the black edition, yours the Irish or white edition. And with no money down, 0% APR, and no test drive, we were forced to own these cars for the rest of our lives. Forgive me, but I fail to see the logic or pride in defining myself or judging another by the cars we drive. Because who we truly are is found inside. Listen, I'm not here to tell you how science has concluded that genetically we're all mixed and race in the human species doesn't exist, or how every historian knows that race was invented in the 15th century to divide people from each other and it has worked perfectly. No, I'm not here to lecture. I just want to ask one question. Who would you be if the world never gave you a label? Never gave you a box to check? Would you be white, black, Mexican, Asian, Native American, Middle Eastern, Indian? No, we would be one. We would be together. No longer living in the era of calling human beings black people or white people. These labels that will forever blind us from seeing a person for who they are, but instead seeing them through the judgmental, prejudicial, artificial filters of who we think they are. And when you let an artificial label define yourself, then my friend, you have chosen smallness over greatness and minimized yourself, confined and divided yourself from others. And it is an undeniable fact that where there is division, there will be conflict, and conflict starts wars. Therefore, every war has started over labels. It's always us versus them. So the answer to war, racism, sexism, and every other ism is so simple that every politician has missed it. It's the labels. We must rip them off. Isn't it funny how no baby is born racist, yet every baby cries when they hear the cries of another? No matter the gender, culture, or color, proving that deep down we were meant to connect and care for each other. That is our mission, and that is not my opinion. That is the truth in a world that has sold us fiction. Please listen, labels only distort our vision, which is why half of those watching this will dismiss it or feel resistance and conflicted. But just remember, so did the caterpillar before it broke through its shell and became the magnificent butterfly. Well, these labels are our shells, and we must do the same thing so we can finally spread our wings. Human beings were not meant to be slapped with labels like groceries and supermarkets. DNA cannot be regulated by the FDA. We were meant to be free, and only until we remove them all and stop living and thinking so small will we be free to see ourselves and each other for who we truly are.
I want to have us discuss, anything you want to talk about with oculocentrism just for, next 10 minutes or so. But I found another one just, shortly before the conference started, this session started, and it's when you look at me. I've included that in the links of my PowerPoint, which I'll provide however that should be provided through ACTAL. But this is a really good one too. It's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And I highly suggest it greatly. So I'd just like to open this up to any kind of comments, or, how much have you ever considered the idea of oculocentrism? Or is also known as visualism, for instance. I know Megan has for sure, but and it's okay if you choose not to say anything, but I know that these virtual sessions were very much meant to have discussions.
I can say for me, it's affected my work in digital collections. And so looking at how we don't diversify the content that's being curated, that then will be processed and scanned and described with metadata. And I think I've worked at a variety of places, trying to find a place to settle. So I've been at 4 academic libraries, and at only one of them, just out of necessity and lack of staffing, did we have a more cohesive vision in terms of what digital collections could be. So I'm just speaking from the academic library special collections side of things. Everywhere else, we've really had image curators and text curators completely separate from moving image and sound. And so the design of these digital spaces is separate. The approach curatorially is separate. And I think in the end, when it's all combined in the same content management system, it doesn't serve the visitors, users, patrons as well as it could. And so I think that's where my brain is when I think about visualism, is that it is very ableist, it is very focused, and it is assuming that you have a certain level of ability, and that like the visuals are the only thing that matter. I think is deeply impacted what I do.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. We'll say the next section, we don't have to go to it quite yet. Hopefully I will represent it correctly, but it's actually a presentation given by Megan Oliver. So, which I will summarize, but I've learned a lot from it. Let me put it that way. So I appreciate your presence here. I mean, everyone's, of course. Hi, Ian, are you wanting to say something? I'm not sure. I saw, Ian, that you muted your, oh, okay, you have in chat. I don't hear you if you're speaking, so yes. So we can't hear you. You might need to figure out or test your Zoom link audio. Okay, well, great. If you want to keep working on that, we can always go back to your ideas, because all of these three separate sections are related to each other. So we can definitely do that. So let's go ahead and continue on. And this again continues about ocularcentrism, but let me just see if I can get this right. So function. Okay, and then back here. Okay, so let me go to the next one. Okay, so part 2, what research has been done about oculocentrism in academic libraries? It's very limited, and that's an understatement. I want to start off by saying that the codex book, you know, what we typically normally call a book, even though it comes in many forms, a scroll, stone tablet, that's a book apparently, and as well as a digital book on a reader perhaps, or on screen, digital screen, computer screen, that's also a book. But what people, vast majority of people, consider a book is an ocular-centric icon and index of the library writ large, or scholarship. You'll see this everywhere, and it's fascinating because we forget that the book was a remarkable form of technology, the codex book, because you could search through it in a non-linear fashion, right? It wasn't a story that was being told to you orally, for instance, where it starts from people can be non-linear in telling their stories, no doubt. But the accessibility of it, of the finding the information within the document, was remarkable in the way you could just, with an index, look up keywords that way, right? It's an early form of computer when you think about it. But it's really interesting that even though we probably many of us see fewer of the print collection being used, and we're jettisoning so many of our serials and that sort of thing, I'll still see people who are about to graduate with their cap and gown go into the stacks and get a picture, even if they've never even checked out a book the whole semester, or maybe even the whole time they're there, because they did it all digitally, right? Or if you search for library icon SVG, and you can really see the type of oculocentrism going on in there. Of course, we're searching for images, no doubt, okay, but it's specifically the book. So I think that's partly demonstrates simply the oculocentrism of the concept of the library. But so yes, it was Megan Oliver, who is now head of digital projects at University of Missouri, Kansas City, who is here with us, and that's wonderful. Gave a presentation at Access Library Conference in Alberta, Canada in 2019 called Optical Mechanics, the Ocularcentric Implications of Digital Collections. I have all these links at the end, but you can access the conference proceedings, including her PowerPoint and the video recording, which is on YouTube. And so you can always check that out there. So I have the link right there as well. One of the key points from what I can perceive is that digital collections offer ample evidence of oculocentrism. Megan defines ableism as intentionally discriminatory beliefs or practices against those who are othered by their physical, intellectual, or psychiatric disabilities. Furthermore, digital collections is defined as is limited to digitized from special collections, not theses, dissertations, web-only serials, databases, or streaming services. And that there's a huge accessibility issue that 20% of library users have partial or no sight, and that probably is a low estimate. And then 30% of library users are auditory learners. And it's hard not to get emotional on that right now with this, but I had a tremendous reading disability when I was young, diagnosed with dyslexia. And my mother told me I played my piano lessons and music notation backwards. And I've always preferred auditory learning, and I read twice as slow as everyone else. But that didn't hinder me. For some reason, as odd as it is, I went on to graduate school in numerous places and wrote a decent dissertation. It was like banging my head against the wall, but I really relate to this, and how when I was younger, I felt like stupid. I felt like not intelligent, because the person who was intelligent could read through these books and they had great reading comprehension and they did great on these tests. That wasn't me. I wanted to go off and do things and build things and play music. And so anyhow, enough about me, but I really relate to this. And so if I'll just say by your first name, Megan, surveyed 25 state level and Ivy League academic institutions. So 25 digital repositories that held a cumulative, basically 26 million items, and with a cumulative 66,000 of those being audio. And so this meets the definition of both ocular-centric and ableist. This is a great slide from her presentation, and it's basically in the circle, the darker gray being visual, and then that sliver, as she mentions in her video recording, is oral digital collections. So it's really astounding when you begin to think about it. So any discussion about this? This is really, really interesting, but there's plenty of time to discuss or what we were talking about before.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Oh, hi, Ian. Yes, thank you.
Good. I found a microphone to plug into my computer.
Great.
I feel like I have a I feel like my approach to this sort of topic of oculocentrism is coming at it from a relatively different angle. I work at Rice University in their library as part of the Digital Media Commons, which is really more focused on actual production of media as opposed to sort of cataloging and curation. And I mean, the thing that I'm actually currently tackling as part of my job right now is the fact that our spaces and our resources for audio media production were kind of an afterthought.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to bring those up to a level that I feel, is befitting our, up to a sort of certain standard to sort of match the resources we have for photography, videography, all sorts of visual medium. And so I think it's, I mean, especially in this day and age, certainly the pandemic sort of accelerated a lot of movement towards pre-recorded or asynchronous methods of sort of delivery and discussion. And a lot of that took the form of recorded audio. And so I'm trying to work with the library here to move in the direction of us actually being able to support that in a more concrete fashion.
Yes, that's thank you for mentioning that. The third part of this next part will actually get into some of that, but I would really, and I would like to get your contact. I don't know if you're going to the ACTAL conference in North Carolina, but yeah, that just goes to show that audio is an afterthought because it's invisible. Like the people involved in audio are like prestidigitators, magicians, and because we deal with the invisible, right? It's really fascinating. But well, why don't I just go ahead, and this last section is the most substantial section in the sense of I have a lot to say about it, and that'll tie in more, I think, Ian, to what you're talking about. But so sound design services and curriculum, music departments, digital media maker spaces in libraries as DEIA, I would say now, and as multisensorial spaces. So sound design is a pervasive aspect of any sound-related human activity. The old school methods or the old school sound design, when we don't think about it, because we have such a myopic view of what technology is, right? The acoustics of a room involves some intended or unintended sound design, right? It's often not considered by architects. There are lots of problems sometimes with these rooms, and the modern discipline of acoustics was developed in Harvard because the lecture halls were so difficult to understand. And I forget the person, he came up with all these standard equations that we still use for measuring acoustics in rooms. But here's a great one. Have you ever thought of this? Librarians shushing. That is a type of sound control, right? It's sound design of the space. Public speaking and how you project your voice, how you use it, that is also sound design. Again, it's mechanical in a sense, or biological, and instead, I mean, non-electronic or digital, but it is, and that ties into how you actually do a recording. What are the best practices for clear, not only pronunciation, but making a clear recording? So then there's the ideal sound of an acoustic instrument. So acoustic, I say, non-electric, that is to say, okay? Because all instruments are ultimately acoustic. We experience everything analog, even if it's been digitally manipulated. It comes out of the speakers or our earbuds, and that is an analog experience. And so when a clarinet professor or a teacher tells her student how to properly play the clarinet, it shouldn't be that squeaking stuff. We don't want that. We want this nice bell tone or whatever. That is sound design, okay? Acoustic recordings of all types, how to place the microphone and what you do afterwards. Even before computers, these audio engineers were doing sound design in terms of shaping sound. Podcasting obviously involves sound design in a very important way. And so the good, successful podcasts, irrespective of their actual content, can affect the person and deeply the listener just by the production quality or itself. Also think sound effects, think the Netflix Sonic logo. That 50% of that, I skipped filmmaking, 50% of the entertainment. I said Steven Spielberg, and I've seen that quote attributed to that filmmaker, but then there's also George Lucas apparently is also credited as saying that. So I have to do some better research in that. It's floating out there somewhere. So yeah, sound effects, the Netflix Sonic logo, we often think of just the logo in terms of a visual element, but when you're actually watching before a Netflix show, the doo-dong, it's huge. It has a huge impact. And I think maybe some of you might be around during the cable or during the television commercials where you would just kill the sound on the audio, and then you like basically vitiate the commercial. Okay. And now sorry, I didn't mean to use poster child. I've been really thinking about should I be using that term. It is the sort of like the classic concept we think of sound design nowadays is past and present electronic music, stuff that is produced electronically, not even leaving, it starts in the computer or maybe with an electronic instrument. So that's often what we think of as sound design, but it's a major evolution in our music making, and you hear it everywhere. There wasn't like a group of acoustic musicians being recorded for about 90% of the kind of music you encounter on an informal and even formal basis. And then finally, there's a term in ethnomusicology, which is basically this, where I did graduate studies in, or the anthropology of music, called humanly organized sound. And it's a better term for music for understanding sociocultural differences in sonic cultures and social organization, because Native American cultures and a lot of indigenous cultures that are not related to, in the Indo-European language family, they don't have anywhere close to a term that equates to the English word music or the word music in the Indo-European language family. And it's really interesting when you see that. So when you are actually speaking about another culture's music, you are inherently being Eurocentric or English-centric. Now, having said all that, due to the hegemony of the English language all over the world, that word music has entered into these languages, and sometimes they appropriate the term directly. They're speaking the regular language, like मैं आपको उर्दू में बात कर रहा हूँ तो मैं music का लफ्ज इस्तेमाल करता हूँ. I was just speaking some Urdu from India, Pakistan area, and I use the word music, and they use that word music, and so that concept of music is now in their at least their conceptual realm because of the language. And now I'm going a little bit crazy off topic here, but I want to get into another thing, why audio is more important than video. And I might even just play this here, but if you do a YouTube search just on that, audio is more important than video, you'll find like, I don't know, 10 videos immediately on these filmmakers or videographers saying that. So let's just look at what this guy has to say. I might skip.
You might have the best looking videos in the world, but I'm going to
I hope you all can hear that. Or do you hear my sound from the computer? Just want to make sure. I'm just going to, oh, good. Awesome.
show you why audio is more important than video next. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the vlog. My name is Vic Barry. I work as a creative video director and editor. And in this video, I want to show you and hear you, listen you, yeah, you can use your ears as well, why audio is far more important than video quality when it comes to your videos or just videos in general. I've got some very basic examples that's going to blow your mind.
And here you go.
I'll show you 2 examples with me talking to camera here. That's all I'm going to do. So this is example 1. Why audio is more important than video quality. Let's go. Boom. the audio is gone really, really screwy. It's hard to hear. It's kind of fuzzy. You're like, what did he say? The picture quality is pretty good. This is shot in DJI Osmo Pocket, and the audio is awful. See, how did that make you feel? So that was the first example where the audio was crap, but the picture quality was pristine and was really, really good. Now, the audio, on the other hand, if it's crap, you immediately want to turn off. Now, to give the contrast and give the opposite idea here, let's have really crappy picture quality and let's have decent audio. So the audio is still very, very good. The picture quality, on the other hand, is awful. It is absolutely awful. It's kind of hard to see. And the audio, though, is still pristine. You can still hear what's going on. You kind of get a rough idea of what is happening, even though the picture quality is kind of crap. Those two examples are done. Right, we're back to the normality of good picture quality and good audio quality. How important the audio quality is. The thing is, people will suffer or put up with or tolerate dodgy video. When it comes to audio, though, we're wired to hear and see with our ears, if that makes any sense. So you're far more likely to click out of a video or exit video or unsubscribe or just dump a video entirely and never come back if the audio quality is poor, because people want to hear that audio and they're going to tolerate that crappy picture quality. So keep that in mind. Invest.
Yeah, so they're taking, do something with your audio. So that's really interesting. And you'll find so many videographers saying that. Let me get in here, see if I can go to the next one. So I wanted to tell you a little bit of my story about setting up the audio lab, A2 Audio Lab in 2016. I encountered this great library podcast of Jason Evans Groff from NC, from North Carolina, and Foster, I think his name is. He's now moved on to becoming a library dean, who did a lot of really cool things about hip hop and library classification. But they were doing a podcast on audio spaces in libraries. And so they were very helpful in helping me set up the whole thing in 2016. From the get-go, I knew this was a DEI space. And I'm not just saying because of my staff here. I got 3 of my staff members, and oddly enough, this picture here is fake because I'm not really playing. And the guy in the back is kind of laughing about it. It's, and I'll tell you why I believe the audio is that supports all that. But what was fascinating was the only place we could put this thing, because library space was at a premium, probably the case in everywhere, was that it was on the quiet floor, the place where you're not supposed to make any sound. So that was interesting to begin with. But it's a very simple, humble audio lab, but it met a need in a huge, huge way. And let me explain. So libraries are like monasteries with pin drop silence, even though that's now being challenged. I'm not saying that they need to be loud, a nightclub kind of thing, right? Where flashing lights and loudness all the time. Sometimes I really want quiet because people can't find other spaces to concentrate and they need a quiet space. So I understand that, but you should understand that noise, the difference between noise and music is fascinating. It's basically unwanted or countercultural sounds. And so it's like weeds, they're unwanted plants. So the phrase ready to make some noise is deeply a non-bourgeois culture phrase, right? It's challenging to the hegemony. So noise as a protest is found in all kinds of cultures when you actually study that. And it's no mistake that rap is considered noise and not music. And so there are people trying to say, yes, it is music, because when you say it's not music, then you're denying its humanity. But what's fascinating is, rap is music. It is noise. Deal with it, right? So you could flip it on the other side of the coin saying, yeah, it's our power because we're making noise. We're doing something outside of, we're challenging the system, right? So there's that. I through the audio lab, I got to know so many people. And one person who's originally from Chicago, Val, he started his career at the audio lab. We also had someone who competed on The Voice. He was a country music singer. He was there at the audio lab. We've had so many other producers come in, and we do have a lot of rappers. Okay. And so, and I think it's great because we have a space on campus where that can happen. You think they're going to do this at the music department? How many music departments are actually doing a course on how to rap, or it's not there. And I'm not saying that it should necessarily be accepted, because maybe we are, taking away its power by making it acceptable in polite society or whatever. But this just says it all, that right there. And it's also multicultural. All kinds of people are doing rap now. It's all over the world. It is the global music, as is the Western classical tradition. There are far few people playing the sitar, and we call that world music. So think about the otherizing alternative discourse involved in something like world music versus, or ethnic music. Like ethnic to who? Who's doing the defining, right? And so I'm sorry I'm going on my little rant here, but the audio lab in the library, and it had to be in a library when you think about it, because music departments are so entrenched in a way of doing things. Librarians are serving everyone on campus. And so by default, I would hope that we're really much more open to possibilities. Okay, so with few exceptions, music departments are de facto notated traditions, notated music traditions that are deeply oculocentric. The composer's score operates as an authoritative set of instructions for sonic behavior. That's my phrase. And I'm not trying to brag or anything like that. It's just, that's what it is, in my opinion. I could be wrong. And the performer can't deviate from those instructions, including when they're allowed to deviate from it. Now, the conductor is the one musician who does not make a sound during the performance and instead coordinates the performance through silent, often dramatic visual gestures. The conductors are a combo DJ plus priest, because they interpret this text of a dead white male European, and they resurrect the spirit as if somehow we can experience the way Mozart heard it. And what is also interesting is the audio participation is also, in a way, it's auditory, but it's also a spectacle. They cannot make any sounds and are supposed to watch and listen in the auditorium. It's a place for hearing, literally what auditorium means. So without any feedback given to the musicians during the performance. This is in contrast to virtually all the other musical and sonic human cultures where audience, sonic participatory and other kinds of bodily actions, that kind of behavior is encouraged. It feeds the audience. I get a lot of this from this book called Music King by Christopher Small, who's since passed away in 2011, I do believe. Brilliant book. I won't read through this. You can just read through this, but it's about the idea that music isn't just the sounds, it's the relationships. Okay. And so you can read through that in there. And I just wanted to play this here. I'm really into electronic music. I'm an electronic music producer. I'm speaking to you from my studio, and I'm getting into online DJing myself. I'm really headed that way. I love tech house. Okay, so let me just see if I can just play it here. So I'm not saying this is what the library needs to evolve to, as a big light show and people partying. Although Friday nights, I really would love this. Cut loose, bring in a DJ and everyone just party. And these the EDM stuff is so deeply multicultural, cross-cultural, and it's all over the world. And there's so many people who want to do this now. There's so many people. So, what are the chances of something like that happening at a university? Some universities might bring in a DJ and they do it elsewhere, but in a small way, it can happen in a digital media maker space at a library, probably not at the music department, right? That's the whole point. Let me just see if I can get to the next one. Just to sort of, before I sum up, there's a whole nother section to this that I never got around to doing, and that is the sound design curriculum. If you go on the internet and you want to learn how to do sound design or electronic music production, there are so many mom and pop music academies. They're all over the place. They're probably in the thousands. It would make a fascinating research thing. And then you can do it all online. There really isn't a physical place. I mean, some people offer a physical location in New York and other places. I was going to learn some DJing from some DJs in Canada, in Calgary, They have a great great music scene there. But I just haven't done it. I want to get into vinyl scratching. I'm not going to learn that there at the in the academy, right? That's the whole point. And so I believe digital media makers, and aside from that, it's a huge missed opportunity. Like, it's a no-brainer. Let's have a sound design certificate program. So a lot of those people at our colleges, our young people, are going elsewhere instead of, and you can learn some great basic musicianship in the Western tradition and learn how to play some instruments if you just take some courses. But I have some music majors who don't want to become band directors. They don't want to become choir directors. They want to perform, or they want to do sound design or something like that. And there are some colleges that have had these traditions, okay? But why isn't it in all the colleges? Why don't we have this? Because the concept of music is so restricted, right? And when I say it's Eurocentric in the sense that it's multicultural people who are in a Eurocentric, so when I think of Kathleen Battle or Jesse Norman, great operatic singers who happen to be, Black Americans, but they're involved in a Eurocentric tradition. Now it's become an epiphenomenon. It's no longer about necessarily Mozart or Bach or whatever, even though that's the cultural origins. And I'm, again, getting on an aside, but what I mean is that there's a lack of diversity of content, and that does equate to a lack of multiculturalism that doesn't represent increasingly the people at our universities. So and again, a huge missed opportunity to do something like a sound design certificate, just not there. So to sum up, digital media makerspaces directly support diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility because they are multi-sensorial spaces open to all students, regardless of departmental affiliation. These content creation spaces are often found in libraries because of their access to everyone. This enables content and viewpoint diversity as well that may not be found in other specific departments. So there's so much more to say on this, and I know I've talked excessively here, but I think we have at least like 9 minutes to talk further. So, and I've said more than enough. Please.
Lowell, how do you see sort of bridging some of these issues where perhaps some of the more audio or oral creations at maybe a campus, let's say they were to evolve, how do you see that making its way into institutional repositories, or like making sure that that is recorded in some way, shape, or form? Does that make sense? Do you see this coming together at a certain point, possibly? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks. I would love to see that happen. I actually do audio archiving as well, because I actually have a significant background in it. And that's what I was hoping to do when I went back to library school. And so I digitized the music department's recordings because they didn't have that before, and it was in a big mess. But what I would love to see is, digital collections involving student created media. It's sort of there's this great book. I don't know how much you know about media librarians, but we have a person by the name of Scott Spicer, who's written a fantastic book on student media creation and the role of multimodal scholarship there and what could be possible. It's a how-to manual, and it's a fantastic book. And I see that tying into digital repositories, diversifying the content for sure, and us being able to become post-Eurocentric in the sense of the Eurocentric curriculum being like, when you take an introduction to music class, what do you learn? The music of Europe from Middle Ages up to the present, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, Aaron Copland, and then they devote entire 1 week to the whole world. We're going to look at world music now. Look how absurd that whole thing is. And so because so many people from all over the world are all playing each other's music now, it's amazing. Like, we can think of so many examples of people who don't have European ancestry who play European music amazingly well. It's their native music. It is their music. So it's getting back to what Prince Ia is saying, is like, how are we connected to each other as much as how are we different? We have to, I believe the move towards identity liberation is deeply important, but at a certain point, I think it's start driving us apart like crazy. We also are deeply connected, and we can honor those connections, and including the negative aspects of them as well as the positive ones. But again, I'm kind of riffing here. I would love to see, like, for instance, competitions, constructive ones, best music creations or whatever, and they can be judged on some sort of objective criteria with different staff. Like we can engage our international students in these ways, and having digital repositories that again are very much accessible and that involve audio and visual equally. So in spoken word stuff, and just allowing different kinds of honoring the multimodal movement, in the sense that knowledge can come in many forms, and critical thought, critique can come in many forms other than just the research paper, which is still, I believe, is very important. But and that's why I'm really excited about ACTAL. It's such a cool organization, the way it's developing. And so I probably didn't really answer your question, Megan, but I would like to see something beyond the European canon when it comes to music.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think you did. I can see you're talking about it from the teaching and creation perspective. And so much of what gets into what I'm doing with digital collections has already been taught or created, right? And so we are really archiving things that are definitely for the past. So they're definitely Eurocentric. They're definitely Western hemisphere centric. So yeah, I see what you're saying. You're talking about going all the way back to the point where we evaluate what we're actually keeping or creating or teaching.
Right.
Makes sense.
And what I would also say, one roadblock to actually hiring people who could teach electronic music or sound design is that they don't have like a master's degree or something like that. You know what I mean? That's also a problem in the sense that they don't qualify insofar as having academic degrees. A place that has this going on is Berkeley Online. I actually went there and did 2 different course certificates as part of my evolution out of being a traditional music librarian. And I was all into it because I live in a very rural area where not too many people are playing Indian classical music. I'm a tabla player, and that's been my world for 20, 30 years. I played some sitar. There's no one here, almost no one I can play with. And so I reached out online, and you find that this experience all the time is that you have these online communities, and this stuff is getting really popular this way. And so, gosh, what was I trying to say? Oh yeah, about audio archiving. So there are so many possibilities now through virtual communities as well as brick and mortar communities. It's just we have to somehow think more broadly or think big, openly. So. So I don't know if that's about it. I would love to hear anything else anyone else might have to say. I fear my presentation was a little bit too big sky. It was far out there, but it has real life consequences or real life application, I think. So.
Yeah. I mean, I found it very interesting. I would certainly like to get your contact information because I, ironically, within the context of this presentation, I have a background in photography and film, and I am going to be helping redesign sound spaces, and so I definitely need a lot of advice on how to do that. But certainly, I think it's I have seen it as a sort of spot that has been lacking within our library here, and one that we certainly need to sort of expand our offerings as sort of a equitable resource for everyone on campus. But yeah, thank you.
And don't you see how libraries are uniquely positioned for that, because we think across disciplines and departments? You know, like our VR headsets are open to everyone, whereas we have departments where their VR headsets are only for their majors, right? In when you think about college, I discovered so much through serendipitous browsing of the stacks, right? I discovered things just like, oh, that's cool. And that it's that kind of discovery helps you identify more about who you are, helps you evolve as a human being. And so libraries are amazing when it comes to that, in my opinion, or at least they should be. So because we're about accessibility, at least ideally about that, but obviously there's a long way to go when it comes to ableism.
Absolutely.
Well, all right. I'll type in my thanks so much, everyone. I'll type in my email contact, my institutional address right there. If you're ever interested in learning more about that, I'm at Arkansas Tech University. Our media spaces are mpl.atu.edu. So go ahead and copy that, and I'll be glad. I'm a pretty good communicator. So thank you so much for attending. I didn't know if I was going to be all alone until I heard earlier that Megan, she was going to attend. So thank you so much. And I think we'll just end the call. So, and this will be recorded. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.